Hi, today I'm giving instructions for how to sew down the fabric that has been adhered to the cloth for the quilt blocks for the Parkside quilt project. This is 2 layers of fabric that has been adhered to the quilt block. The pink has been adhered to black fabric via the Pellon Wonder Under, which is an adhesive that is paper backed. And then the black has been adhered to the green via the Wonder Under. So this is really cool. The only issue is that after several washings, those edges are going to fray. After many washings, the adhesive might come unglued a little bit. So what we want to do is sew around these edges quite close to prevent the unraveling to a great degree and to really stabilize these things. So what I'm going to show you is first sewing the black to the green, because I have black in my machine right now. Then I'll change the thread and we'll sew the pink down. And we'll do that on all the edges of the blocks that have been adhered with Wonder Under. So first what I'm going to be doing is, if you notice the foot that I have right now, there's just a small hole that's visible. I would like to, I have some other feet for my machine. I would like to get a foot that has more space across that's visible. So if you have a foot on your machine that allows you to see more of the area that you're sewing, that might be a good idea. If you don't, this is still doable. There you go. I'm going to, I usually do this just to make sure that my machine is threaded correctly. Run a test strip, make sure my stitches are looking good. Stitch length I want. Last row, looking good. Happy with that. Alright. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch close to the edge, maybe about a half or an eighth of an inch. So on my foot there is, I'm going to put my glasses on for this, there is a line straight down the middle of the foot where the needle is going to go down. If you can see my fingernail, it's right there. And so to the right, that's where the black edge of the fabric is lining up. So I'm going to do about an eighth of an inch. I'm going to hold my thread, and then I'm just going to kind of slowly stitch right along there. And along. I want a thread to match so that it doesn't have to be anything beautiful. The whole idea is, oops, I got really close to the edge there, but that's okay. The whole idea is that you want to create kind of a boundary so that when the edge ravels, it's not going to ravel past that point where you're stitching. So you want it as close as you can get to the edge without really going past the edge. It doesn't have to be beautiful, especially if we get the thread to match. And I'll be making sure that we have good thread matches to the fabric. So we don't want actually the thread to be, we don't want the stitching to be noticeable. We just want it there purely for a functional reason. Got really close on that one. That's okay. And then at the very end, I left that thread so I could tell where I started. The thread match is so close. And then I'm just going to run over the threads where I start. Don't need to back tack. Boom. Can hardly even see it. That's the point. Okay, so now I've threaded my machine with pink thread. I did the test to make sure that, let's see, where is that? I did the test to make sure that the stitching was stitching okay. And now I'm ready to start stitching the pink layer on. So I'm going to start on this nice long stretch because this is where I want to end up to connect where I started and where I end up. So you can see where my line is, and I have a little bit of an edge, a little margin from where the stitch is going to be to the edge of the pink. And I'm going to hold my thread, and I begin. I'll do this a little bit so you can see how that looks. This is just thread that I had in my stash. Not sure that this is, oh, this looks like it's a good choice. So, but I'll be doing my best with all of the fabric selections that we'll make for the children to ensure that we make the very best choices and provide the very best thread colors, so you don't have to worry about you know, making sure that everything is perfect, perfect, perfect. So hopefully, yeah, you're getting a view there of how close the stitching is to the edge and how that looks. So yeah, not too bad. Okay, I'm just coming around the other leg of the herring inspired figure, and just had a few comments. So I mentioned that anything with that was applied using the Wonder Under is going to require this stitching on in order to make these quilts washable over time and really permanent, well-loved keepsakes. I do have to say that what I'm showing you with these herring ones are really, I'm showing you the most difficult case scenario. These are going to be the most difficult ones to do out of all the quilt blocks that that I've shown, that the herring ones. These ones require the slowest, most careful manipulation. All the other options that we have for quilt blocks involve circles, much larger circles for the most part, or straight lines, and require a lot less kind of specific manipulation within small spaces. So here I come on the closing line. Make sure with this thread that you left dangling that you just hold that off to the side so it doesn't get tied up in your other threads. And like I mentioned with the black, I'm just going to go over for several stitches, those initial ones, so those kind of get locked up and don't get raveled. I'm going to do my trim my threads, and there we have, well, this isn't working so well, but hopefully you can see, there we have the completed, as we call it in quilting, we have the completed applique. Ta-da! And now that I have my machine threaded with the pink thread, I'm going to go ahead and applique on the other pink objects for the other sampler quilt blocks that we have, and I can show you some of those. Okay, so the block that I have right now is the block that has the Fibonacci circles, and what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to do the sewing with the pink around the pink circle. Now this one, there's not going to be, we're not going to be completing the circle and locking our stitches in. So with this one, I am going to back stitch. Just a couple of back stitches once I get started, just to lock that in. Okay, so I'm starting right on the edge there. I'm going to put my needle down in, make sure it's a good spot. I'm going to go a couple of stitches. There, I backstitched. Now I'm going to proceed forward. And you can see as long as I go a pretty simple pace, this is really straightforward. It's not as involved as the herring stitching. Although on the smallest circles, those are the ones with the half-inch diameter, those ones do. Those ones are pretty small, and you do have to kind of use your lever and manipulate those ones pretty frequently. The larger ones, however, pretty straightforward. Okay. Now at the end, I'm going to back tack a couple of stitches just to lock those stitches in. There you see those final stitches. Not obvious at all that we back tacked if we've gone over those well. Lastly, I'll show you just how very straightforward it is to do the stitching for the straight ones on the pie bars. Even though these are right next to each other, I'll have to stitch the pink across these three edges. This bottom one will be sewn into a seam. Therefore, we don't have to stitch across that bottom edge. And also, if I start down here, down far enough where it's going to be stitched in, into that bottom seam, I don't need to back tack. Just hold that. One more stitch. And then I'm just going to run this right off the fabric with my threads. And there, that's how that looks. Easy. So let's look at what we've done with the tacking down the appliques and the work that we've done. First, we have the herring inspired block. If I get this very close, the match of the black is so close that it's really hard to see that, but you can see the stitching on the pink, and you can see right at the tip of my fingernail where we ran over the original seam just to lock that in. That made it so that we didn't have to back tack over our seam. The next one we did was and just an interesting note, you can see the back of the square to show that, yeah, in fact we did do the black outline. This is the Fibonacci sequence, the circles block, and the outline that we did was the pink. We back tacked on both ends. We only did it a couple of stitches, so it wasn't too obvious, and we didn't run into the orange. And we'll do that for each of the blocks. And again, the back of the block to see. And then this is for the digits of pi block, if this is one that we end up doing, because we have the pink thread in our machine. We could just go through and tack down on the three sides that aren't going to be sewn in. We don't have to do this bottom because that's going to be sewn into a seam. This one technically will be sewn into a seam, but it's just a good idea to do it, just to do it. When I applique this one down, when I sew this one down, I'll also be sewing in that seam. This is very close to the edge, that 1/4 inch, so it's just a really good idea on these bars to do these side ones. Thanks for your work on this. I hope you find this fun and easy and something you can do in a straightforward manner. Thanks a lot.